AWA Superclash 4 is worse than Heroes of Wrestling. There, I said it. Thanks, AWA. Thanks to the defunct promotion for making me think of Heroes of Wrestling. Now I have to get those thoughts out of my head before this review. Ow, there, that should do it. So, if you're unfamiliar with the AWA, it was a once very prominent promotion run by Vern Gagne, who actually was smart with how he went out to various TV markets and went through and got got a lot of, talent cultivated into his promotion. And he ran it really smartly. Like, if you look at the history, they didn't run all that much in the summer. They would take some time off. Nick Bockwinkel talked about quality of life and being the AWA champion and working a good amount of dates and working hard every single night, but that Vern was smart with how he ran his promotion. Not that you know it, with how it was by 1990. Now, AWA by this point was a hollow husk. It was like a freaking tomb. There were people going in there, they weren't getting paid all that well. You had stuff like the Team Challenge series that was Vern's way of trying to get back into the into the mainstream, or show, hey, we can be hip, kind of like Grandpa Simpson trying to be hip and all that stuff and not break a hip. And I know age jokes maybe aren't, the nicest thing, but really, AWA by even 1987 was pretty much done. Now, they got a shot in the arm after Hogan left. They got some towns like, the Road Warriors, they did have the Midnight Rockers. They had some good matches on occasion, but you take a look at what it was now. This was a 7-match card, and if you factor in, like the little opening that they had, like, they just had a little, like, national anthem thing. They just wanted to, play that in the St. Paul Civic Center, which has a capacity of 16,000 people. To give you an idea of just how poorly this show drew, 2,000 people, 1/8 of the capacity. They couldn't even half fill it. They couldn't even quarter fill it. It was so goddamn atrocious. It was rotten. I couldn't believe just how bad this was. And I thought, oh, okay, I can't possibly see something worse than Heroes of Wrestling. Crap, I thought of Heroes of Wrestling again. That's not going to do me any good. I just got to remember, Heroes of Wrestling, if you're unfamiliar with it, at least you could laugh at that, but you could also understand what the guy was trying to do. Now, the show was snake bit, literally, because Jake the Snake Roberts was in the main event, but at least they tried to bring some legends in. There were some young talent, some young talents featured on this show, but AWA had nothing to it. They still had their ESPN deal that was running in syndication, but they had no money. They were out of town. They were out of ideas. They had Eric Bischoff in the early part of his career doing the promos, and it's weird to see how Eric Bischoff was then and what he would become in WCW just a number of years later. Like, literally, 5 years later when he would be a commentator? He would, about 5.5 years later, because this was April of 1990. But my God, I can't get over how atrocious this show was. And if you can tell, I'm stalling. I'm not even stalling about it. I just can't really display my angst and my anger towards this and just how atrocious this was. This was worse than the WCW 2000 pay-per-view. So, AWA had, a camera that was kind of like at the back and would just zoom in and stuff like that, kind of like the whole Rainmaker pose, or you gotta give the people what they want and then draw the camera out. It was like that. It was like that stuff. So it was terrible. It was terrible because the cameraman also must have been near part of the crowd, because you could hear some members of the crowd talking. Also, there must have been some issues with this tape, or they never had commentary for it, because there was no commentary to all this. So if you weren't in tune with all the AWA storylines or any of these guys, if you didn't hear what the ring announcer said, you had no goddamn idea. I have no idea who the ring announcer woman was. She did fine. She had hair as big as the goddamn sun, but not as bright as the sun, but as big as the goddamn sun. It was huge. It was like big old 80s, early 90s hair. So, the male ring announcer, or at least like one of the guys I assume that ran with the company, said that JYD was injured. I think he suffered some kind of knee injury. I don't recall exactly, but I think he was working with WCW at the time, so I think that this is just his way of being written off. But they said, don't worry, we found a replacement, Baron von Raschke, who was an AWA mainstay and also had wrestled in Jim Crockett Promotions and was also almost 50 years old at this time. But that match comes up a little bit later. We get Jake the Milkman Millman, who's a resident jobber in like various promotions, AWA, WWE a few times, and actually was, pretty beloved. You might recognize him if you see him, as he was pretty good at doing jobs. Versus Todd Becker. I have no idea who Todd Becker is. No clue. Nothing against the guy. The crowd was barely awake, even though they cheered Jake a little bit. It was very echoey, and we get a sunset flip for 3. So Jake went, hey, the jobber gets a win. Hooray! I mean, he was over at least, or as over as anybody could be in a building that was that goddamn empty. And I know that I'm just a fan. I'm just looking at this whole thing in a vacuum. But if you take a look at AWA, like take a look at Wrestle Rock, take a look at the other big AWA shows, even from just a few years before. AWA Superclash, or Superclash 3, from like a year and a half before, the infamous one with Kerry Von Erich and Jerry Lawler, at least had a decent sized crowd. Now, it wasn't sold out, and if it was probably papered. But they at least had a passionate fan base there. And yes, it was a CWA, World Class Championship Wrestling and Memphis and all that and all these promotions. And it was a bad idea all around. And this was even worse. This was one of the last AWA shows that they ran. Their last tapings would take place in August. And then they would file for bankruptcy. After a whole month. Watch the Spectacular Legacy of the AWA and you'll understand more about like why they went out of business. But it's just from 1960 to 1991, and technically they died in like say 88. You could argue they died in 88. Like Superclash 3 was like the last one. So yeah, we had that match. Then we had the Texas Hangman, not Hangman Page, Killer and Psycho. They're Psycho Killers, and if that song's not in your head, you're better than me because it's in mine. They were masked guys, so the twin magic shit was going to be pulled. They took on Brad Reagans and DJ Peterson. He was not a DJ. I was very disappointed by that. He had mullets, though. A lot of goddamn mullets on this. Nothing wrong with mullets, but boy, you could tell it was the late 80s, early 90s pay-per-view. And maybe just a big show. I don't know if the AWA had pay-per-view clearance at this point. But you could hear a chat about like them needing to find another station for something. And it was either people in the crowd or it was Vern Gagne talking to people. I have no goddamn idea because it was right near the camera. And it was terrible. The camera work was shit. Absolute shit. They kept zooming or kept getting confused and stuff like that. Maybe the cameraman didn't know what he was doing. Maybe they didn't have it centered properly. I don't goddamn know. And the crowd made some noise, but again was also echoey because, 2,000 people in a huge arena. At least huge for the crowd size compared to the capacity. They used Twin Magic and got the victory. Oh no, the mask guys cheated, oh no, and nobody got hung. That sounded a lot less dirty in my head, but I'm just going to roll with it. So we get Baron Von Raschke versus Colonel Debeers. Baron Von Raschke, who is, again, a legend in AWA and Jim Crockett Promotions and all over, was 49 years old at this point, would turn 50 in October of this year. And he looked about 80. And he had some good thoughts during the Spectacular Legacy of the AWA documentary, and there's no doubt that the guy is a legend, at least in some respects. I mean, I can't say I've seen too many of his matches where I'm like, wow, I'm really glad I saw that, but also a lot of footage of his stuff wouldn't be readily known unless they have a lot of 70s Jim Crockett Promotions footage, which hopefully they do. Hopefully the network has that. Maybe I can see him in better days because this was not one of them. General Adnan, he was called something else here. The guy that would be Sergeant Slaughter's translator, so to speak, his Iranian spokesperson because he ran so far away, he's got to get away. That storyline came up later the year of this pay-per-view. Yay, hooray for exploiting people. So, we get a count-out win for Baron Von Raschke, and then, General Adnan does something, and it was terrible. It was fucking terrible. Tully Blanchard, by the way, fresh off, about a year away from not being able to come back to the NWA, because Jim Herd decided to uphold a drug test that Tully may or may not have failed intentionally. Who the fuck knows? Everybody was doing drugs back then, but Tully got popped. So he floated around and everything and did some stuff, and he didn't make as much money, but he made an appearance here, and it was really sad because Tully looked like he aged about 10 to 15 years in 5. he looked way, way older than he did in 1985. And sure, he had a lot of stress, and he even talked about that, and I think he's become an ordained minister since. So he didn't really do a whole lot of wrestling. He was on Heroes of Wrestling, though, so at least he was on a card infinitely worse than this. So, who did he take on? He took on a guy named Tommy Jammer, who was not Van Hammer's DJ brother or anything. I'm DJ obsessed, I don't know why. Tommy Jammer looks like what would happen if you had Lance Von Erich and Alex Wright have a baby. And if I have to think of these things, I'm putting these thoughts in your head, you are welcome. You are absolutely welcome for that. There was a lot where it was like the arm trap on the mat and everything, and just like working over the arm and everything. Just doing hammerlock stuff and whatever. You know what he did? He did that for about 5 minutes. This match went about 16 minutes. And half of it was spent on the mat. The crowd started chanting for Tully. And Tully was a heel. He had some bigger guy with a mullet with him. I didn't catch the name. I didn't really care because AWA by this point wasn't worth remembering. But thank fucking Christ, Tully won. He won with the old thing where they did with Rick Rude Ultimate Warrior, where did the suplex over, and then the heel lands on top, Tully lands on top, and his manager held the foot 1, 2, 3. So I guess this Tommy Jammer guy had been undefeated. I mean, for whatever that was worth in the AWA at that point. And then while Tully decides to get some more anger towards him and some sympathy on Tommy Jammer, he decides to hit him with a chair multiple times. And you can hear somebody right by the camera call Tully the F word. No, I ain't talking about fucker. I'm talking about the gay slur. Don't you dare fucking use that in the comments or you're banned. I ain't allowing that shit. There are a lot of words I'll say. I ain't allowing that word here. This is an open forum to talk however you want, but I mean my channel. I am more than willing to listen to anybody, but I am LGBTQ friendly. Don't like it? Too bad. So anyway, but I mean, I'm not too surprised there's some idiot there, and hopefully maybe that guy grew up and learned not to say that word, because that word ain't okay. It really ain't. So anyway, we get John Nord versus Coquina Maximus. You may know these two, actually. John Nord, otherwise known as the Berserker, the guy that carried the sword with him. The guy that carried a sword with him to the ring. Coquina Maximus became a little-known guy known as Yokozuna, two-time WWE champion. It was weird to see Yokozuna when he was probably about, I'd say, 325, 350. I mean, if he was 400, he moved around pretty goddamn well. But I almost wish he would have stayed at around 350 because he might have had a longer life. Who knows if he would have been a WWE champion, but you know what? It might have worked better because, good God, it got sad. That's another story for another day, though. How was this match? It was a lumberjack match, though. Everything was kind of, they had the ring announcer rush through the stuff. So you had Baron von Raschke and various others and everything, and Tully Blanchard out there at ringside. You had various people out there. You had pretty much the entire crew that was on the pay-per-view out as lumberjacks. All like 10 of them. I kid. It was bad. It was a bad match. And John Nord howled a lot, and that got over with people. I guess he was some kind of weird lumberjack. He had an axe with him. He's very weapon-obsessed is what he is. He was also jacked in this day. He was also pretty goddamn jacked, and Yoko, or pre-Yoko, actually could move pretty damn well. And he could always move well, but it was nice to see him where he could almost have been part of the Samoan SWAT team and teamed up with Rikishi. But anyway, it was abysmal. It was goddamn abysmal. And it was 7 minutes, and it felt like it was about 5 years. And this briefcase from the Sheik Adnan Casey, I think that's what it was, took the case from him, and then a bunch of papers flew out, and then I guess the referee just allowed this because there were no DQs in a lumberjack match, and he just hit Maximus with the briefcase and pinned him. Cool. Okay. Thank God we only got 2 matches left. We have Larry Zbyszko versus Mr. Saito. Saito suplex, all that stuff. Legend in wrestling. Legend from Japan. AWA Championship. Nick Bockwinkel as the referee, as he had retired from full-time competition, I believe, right after he lost to Kurt Hennig. I think it was pretty much it. Right around 87. I think maybe sometime in early 88 he might have retired. Bockwinkel had been wrestling for a number of years. And a lot of people were introduced, and all these people and stuff like that. You had Ricky Choshu. Cool. Okay, Ricky Choshu, he ain't got any reaction. But then Verganya, who, by the way, runs the AWA, who's running this, and is a legend in Minnesota. Boo. God, it was so many boos. It was so many insane boos. There was a lot of mat wrestling and slowness and choking, the whole choking thing on there, and none of it was good, which is sad because Saito actually wasn't all that bad. And Larry Zbyszko was never a main eventer. He's never a main eventer. I'm just going to say that right now. His feud with Bruno proved that he had the chops to succeed. But if you didn't put him with somebody that was a legend, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to fucking work at all. And sadly, by comparison, this actually wasn't all that bad, but it just was so freaking plotting. And I didn't expect these guys to be doing flying head scissors and stuff like that. But any of the slugfest stuff that they did just didn't look convincing. There was like a sleeper hold for 3 minutes. There was a sharpshooter spot or scorpion deathlock spot, which, whatever you prefer. There was a nice snap Saito suplex, or, variation of a Saito suplex. Not the snap one like Jay White does, or others that do it better. Hi, I'm going to piss people off here by saying that. And then we get a double pin, the German suplex with a double pin. Okay, 1, 2, and then Zbyszko gets his shoulder up right at 3, right before 3. So first, the ring announcer says, oh no, Saito won. Oh wait, no, Zbyszko won. And then we had this big old, stuff going on where I guess Zbyszko was supposed to be the heel. And the only reason Zbyszko was in the AWA was he married to Vern's daughter? Is that what it was? I think he was married to one of Vern's kids. It definitely wasn't Greg. I kid. Nothing wrong with that. It definitely wasn't Greg because Greg I think had a wife, but I think Vern had a daughter. But anyway, it is what it is. It was terrible. It was just terrible. I can't believe how bad this pay-per-view was. And it was only like an hour, like bell to bell action. Like if you take out like the little national anthem playing and you start right from when the ring announcer is talking and you go to right after the main event ends, it was maybe an hour and 40 minutes. And it just felt like it took forever. So Saito argues and attacks Larry. It is what it is. The best is yet to come, though. We get the Trooper and Paul Diamond versus the Destruction Crew steel cage match. And some former football guy was the referee. I didn't catch the name of it. I didn't care. He looked like a frickin' beanpole. Destruction Crew would later become the Beverly Brothers. The Trooper you may know more famously as the Patriot. And let me tell you, it is a good thing that he wore the mask. Now, I know that I am not GQ at all. I wouldn't be GQ if I was the last man on Earth. I wouldn't be GQ ready. They would feature a lizard, a dead lizard, before they featured me. But there are some times where masks are good for wrestlers. So, this was sadly the best match of the night, and you know what? It was a mess. Mike Enos, one of the Destruction Crew, bled. I think Trooper bled, but I'm not really sure. The referee got involved because the Destruction Crew were being just jackasses and stuff like that. So at one point he pushes one down. I think he pushed Bloom down. And he did an elbow drop on Enos when he had Trooper covered and then put Trooper on that and topped him 1, 2, 3. And then they beat up the ref afterwards. In the last 15 minutes were post-match promos, post-match interviews, stuff like that. Hey, let's talk about these matches and then let's talk about what's next. Before every single promo, you could actually hear the guy say, rolling. They didn't even bother to edit this. Now, they did in the beginning have WWE Network had, hey, present the most complete form due to technical difficulties. Okay, fair. They did that with Great American Bash 89. And there were some issues with that, at least with the, 2-ring battle royal that Sid and Spivey won. Sid Vicious, the good skyscraper, and then also Dan Spivey, who wasn't any good at all. I would argue that Dan Spivey was terrible. As Waylon Mercy, fine. He was a fine talker. Ish. Kinda. Anyway, rip off a Cape Fear. Moving back on to this. Eric Bischoff conducts the interviews, and actually it was kind of funny, because considering where Eric Bischoff would end up being a pretty confident talker on camera, a number of years later, it was just kind of funny to see him still have the deer in the headlights thing, but they were doing it out of necessity. It was his first job in wrestling, and he needed the money, and they were paying him, or at least they were paying him something decent. Even though Vern at this point wasn't really paying people all that much because, oh yeah, he had all the stuff going on because, oh yeah, the company was dead. So, he does the interview. Saito and his associate, they talk a bit. Then Colonel Debeers talks about collecting money from Sheik Adnan Casey. He better collect it quick because he was going to be gone from the company soon. And then they have outtakes of Colonel Debeers doing something, I assume a promo spot for like some kind of radio station or something. They had actual outtakes in the tape here. Or, the tape that, or at least, the set that is on here. They had actual outtakes and I couldn't fucking believe it. I thought of doing outtakes and just, saving, bullshit that I did on the show, like, or like taking outtakes when Derb and I did videos, which will happen eventually, by the way, but that hasn't happened yet. Blooper reels might be fun. So, yeah, they had Bischoff and Bockwinkel. They would actually, have a decent friendship, and Bockwinkel would, I believe, put in a good word for him also in in WCW, or maybe it was Bischoff. Well, I don't remember. Bockwinkel, no, it was DDP. But Bockwinkel probably had, some appreciation for Bischoff, and Bischoff had appreciation for Bockwinkel, as he's talked about in interviews. And then Larry says something about everything's good in Larry Land, and then yells and says he's going to keep this championship till the day he dies. Well, the promotion died first, really quickly. He was the last AWA champion. I think he left to go to WCW in fall of 90, and they stripped him of the championship, but they never got to crown anybody because, oh yeah, the company went out of business. And then Roland, another Roland thing. Keep rolling, what? And then we get Destruction Crew talking. Enos has got a bandage over his head. And totally talking with whatever is going on. I don't know why the ref yelled. Everybody was yelling. And they screwed up the promo with the Trooper, so they had to redo it. And they left that in. Vern Gagne cared a lot about his product and made sure to run a tight ship and made sure to run it really, really well. And he couldn't even do it here. I don't know if he just didn't give a shit at this point. I don't know if they were just doing content for the sake of content. I don't know who bought this pay-per-view. I would have felt profoundly ripped off. And I watched it on the network, which I paid for a very, very, very undisclosed price of $9.99. Wait, I just disclosed it. Oh no, if the secret gets out, people might buy it. This pay-per-view is atrocious, though. It was I felt like I wasted my time watching it, but I was like, okay, hey, I need content you guys enjoy when I rant about shit. So yeah, AWA Superclash 4, terrible. Fucking terrible. Don't watch it. And if you do watch it, you're going to understand why the fuck I hated it. Anyway, agree, disagree, what I said. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.